Sexual harassment for me would be unwanted sexual attention from somebody from the same or opposite sex.
Similar to abuse, right? It's physical, it's mental, it's intellectual, it's spiritual, and so whether you're touching me or cat whistling, if I don't approve of what you're doing towards me, it's not okay, it's not cool.
We take it lightly as guys. Sexual harassment is a real thing. You know what I'm saying? If it's not in your consent, then it is sexual harassment. But we as guys feel that it's very chill. We can't really complain about it or lay charges about it. You know what I'm saying? But it is a real thing and it happens.
Sexual harassment is really any act that you don't consent to, and it could even be high. Maybe I'm taking it too far, but sometimes we walk on the street and you get catcalled. That's sexual harassment for me.
I think any invasion of one's personal space, in a sense of voice, in a sense of physical touch, all of that stuff is sexual harassment.
Anytime that you feel that the actions that you're doing could possibly put somebody in an uncomfortable position or in a position that they would not like to be in, I think it really is incumbent upon you to also realize that what you're doing could possibly be perceived as uncomfortable, and in that case you shouldn't then back off.
Women experience it on a higher level than men, and it's an everyday battle for women. So we kind of have become numb to it now, because you get used to just ignoring people when they hiss and whistle and flate in your direction.
People underestimate the extent of sexual harassment as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur. And I think that's one thing I would love to talk about, because there have been a number of opportunities that are presented to you at another pretext of business. And it seems like the only way to close the deal is through some kind of sexual favor.
There's too much that happens that we sort of brush under the carpet, we sweep under the carpet. Because we're like, this is normal, this happens all the time. So you walk into a club, someone does that, or even like going to a grocery store and someone comes up to you and you're not really keen, but someone's there. But because I think we're also taught to be respectful, just handle the situation without causing a scene.
In the workplace, you don't want to be that female that has a voice, because it hinders your progress. You don't want to be the complainer. You don't want to be labeled as a negative energy, because in corporate it's a very male-dominated space, and you need to adjust, and you need to fit in, and you need to be likable.
When you're like an intern in these big corporate firms, right? And you hear about these things until they start happening to you. When an exec is like, oh, so can I take you out for coffee? Why? Can we talk about work though? Can we talk about my growth? So at those different levels, and I have experienced it, and it gets worse the older you get.
It's the hello, but with the touch on your shoulder. I do think it's an invasion of a private space, and for me, and even sometimes someone calling you darling or sweetheart when you have no personal relationship.
At work is kind of, you need to be professional. Only after you friend that person, if you're close to that person, and you can get to understand that, that's only, I think, you can try slide it in, but you need to be professional when you get to work. Because a little thing can land you in a disciplinary hearing.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done with regards to men and how men are raised. A lot of the time, men are raised by women. And I think men need a male role model in order to raise them.
The whole thing around patriarchy and empowering boys to really feel like they are able to do things that ladies can't, I think it's really, really problematic. So for me, it starts with raising boys, and then secondly, it really is about raising our girls as well. Raising our girls to be sexually empowered, to know exactly what they want, when they want it, and be able to communicate exactly that.
Hi everybody, and welcome welcome to Unfiltered Live. First of all, we'd like to say sorry for the technical delay. We're looking for a new technical guy, so if you know anyone, please drop their ads. Second of all, we're going to introduce our guest. This is Rhodé Marshall. She's got quite an extensive CV, but I'll just say she's an award-winning journalist and the current lifestyle editor of the City Press. So we got a good one. And a writer of Men Are Trash articles galore. So I think the first thing we can go into is, guys, what do you guys think sexual harassment is? Like, what does it entail? Yeah.
Well, for me, sexual harassment is any unwanted, unsolicited advances made to women, be it sexual advances or any verbal advances. Just things you're not supposed to do that makes women feel violated, or even men, but mostly women.
I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, Mangi, but like, is there stuff about sexual harassment, especially with the Me Too movement, that you've learned that maybe you didn't know was sexual harassment?
Yeah, I think for me it was. I always thought that it's like overtly, like, you know, you have to like either squeezing someone's bum or like something that's like physical, you know. Whereas now I've before even the Me Too movement, I knew that, like, you know, you can't, things like catcalling, it's like, it's old school vibe, like, bro, we're done with that, you know. So for me, I always thought growing up that it's something like literally like quite sexual, but then you realize as you get older and you're exposed to these things that, no man, it's just anything, like basically just, bro, just stay in your lane. If someone doesn't want you to hit on them or anything, just enjoy.
Yeah, I think for me, I also learned that it's non-verbal cues, because I also thought it was something that you either have to say or you have to do, and I've learned that it also can just be like neither of the two. It can be how you are in front of somebody, sexual innuendos, the way you stare at somebody, those kind of creepy non-verbal, non-physical cues I didn't actually think were sexual harassment, and now I've since learned that, like, actually those things are, and you can even report them if you feel that uncomfortable with someone. But I think let's go into personal examples. Rhodé is obviously, I'm sure you've experienced it in the workplace, but also outside the workplace. Can you tell us maybe one or two examples that really touched you or have changed the way you do something certain?
Well, a place where I never have felt safe in Joburg, it's always Kitcheners. Like, I've always had, when you're sitting at the bar or you're by yourself, that a guy will come talk to you, and because you're polite, you'll say like hello back, or either just, I'm not here for you, you know? And then they get quite aggressive, and I've had various people be quite aggressive. I've had to record someone on my phone and threaten to post it so he would leave me alone. Like, he was shoving and shoving and shoving in my face the fact that he's gonna buy me a drink and he wants attention, and then he started calling me names because I was not interested. I've had another person at Kitcheners push me against the wall and put his tongue in my mouth.
No.
Unfortunately for him, I had a bottle in my hand and it met his head. But and another guy came in and handled him. But it happens. I've had so many instances there where people just don't know how to accept the word no, or know that when you go out, I'm there for myself. I'm not there for you. And so when I am saying I'm cool, like, it's cool, move on. If I'm not participating in the conversation, like, have social cues, like, know those things when people are saying no. And I think, like, one of the most traumatic experiences were when I was on a plane and I was talking to this man, and my friend and I booked seats, like aisle seats, window seats, hoping there's no one in the middle. But it was a full flight, and an older man ended up sitting in the middle, and he was quite friendly with us, talking, telling us about his wife, and that he's going to visit his mother for Ramadan, and asking us what we do. And it seemed quite cool, like, he's a university professor, cool guy, so we could have a cool chat, and asking us which movies we should watch. So we felt quite comfortable with him. It didn't quite bother us. So once the lights went down, everyone had their blankets around them, and then I felt someone like rubbing the side of my leg. But, like, you know, when you have like that second, you're like, no, like, this can't be, like something weird. So I kept moving more and more to the side, and it kept on happening. And when I pulled the blanket off, his hand was literally in my lap, and he just moved his hand back, and I just like was a bit shocked, and I wasn't sure what to do. My friend was sleeping, and like my heart was beating so fast. And at some point he said to me, like he tapped me on the shoulder and he said to me, is that disturbing you? Am I bothering you? And I shouted, yes, like, don't do that. And I was crying because I couldn't believe that in this space where you feel like you're in the air, like your worst nightmare is falling, like a plane crash, not a person doing that to you. And when I shared that story, there were so many people who were talking about more than one time where that has happened to them.
On a plane?
On a plane.
Jesus.
And ever since then, when I'm on a plane, like, and it's a long flight, I can't sleep, and I feel a bit nervous about who's going to sit next to me, because it's such a small space, and you assume that sitting there that you're safe, but it just like wasn't.
So for me, what I what I got from us recording the episode, and then subsequently having chats with like my relatives and my sisters and all like my friends, like, you know, various friendship groups, is that every single one of them had an experience to recall, which freaked me out, you know, because you think it's like a certain odd occasion thing, or like I was saying earlier on, that it has to be something that's like physical, or, you know what I mean, that's just like obvious. And then I realized that, Jesus, like, men are trash.
Yeah.
You know.
Last year I met a woman. Her name's Luando. She works like Constitutional Hill. Sharats. But so last year we decided to do a campaign around harassment and around Women's Month, Women's Day, and we called it "I used to" #IUsed to. So basically, the premise of the video was basically getting women to come speak about real life examples of things that they used to be able to do that they no longer feel comfortable because of an overt incident of harassment. So for instance, I cannot be in a space with men I don't know, a small space with men I don't know, like at all. Like I will not go into a lift if there's like two men there. Mine was specifically a lift because it happened in a lift, but any confined space, even offices, cars, just where there's men I'm not familiar with or men I don't know, I cannot be in there. And some of their stories were so banal. I mean, one of them was with a girl's personal trainer, who she's paid now to make her look physically in line with what she wants, and he's using the opportunity to touch her further than what is necessary and make comments about the bum that he's creating, and he should be the first one to, you know, test drive this new body. And so she's been unable to have a male personal trainer ever since. And I mean, I once had a gynae, and he had examined like family members of mine as well. He was like not a family gynae, but he'd done like my cousin or whatever, examined. And I went to go see him or whatever, and he was just like, oh, you know, you look like your family or whatever. So I was just like, oh yeah, well, we all kind of look similar. And he was like, no, not here. And I was just like...
But that's like, for me, that's like next level.
Like, imagine being exposed. You know what it's like to be in a gynae? Like, your legs are like
it's an intrusive environment.
It's so intrusive, and he's already there, and he's busy making this kind of comment. And he was like an older guy, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, because I'm also in this situation. I really came here for, you know, to get checked out by you, and this is a space where if I'm like, oh, this doctor did this, it's like, yeah, he's a gynae, he's supposed to examine you, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have any much to say. So I think like Rhodé, I've also just cried, and I've hated the fact that I pride myself on being someone quite strong and quite vociferous, and most of the incidents that have happened to me have just resulted in me crying and not really saying much more else after. So why do you, in your opinion, think that you cried when you had that experience, when you know so much about sexual harassment? And
when it comes to how men treat women's bodies, it's a power struggle, and a lot of times when men attack women, it's to disempower them, and sex is used as their tool. So they use our bodies against us. And And like, I am more terrified of the men who know these things and who use that knowledge and those tools to make you comfortable, so that when it happens, you completely bowled over and you're completely in shock, because I didn't expect it from you. So when you see it coming, you get yourself armed and you're ready as a woman. But when it's in an environment where you feel safe and you feel that you can trust people, it disempowers you. So in that moment, I felt completely disempowered, because you're comfortable, you're relaxed, you know a bit about this person, they know a bit about you, and then in that moment, like, everything is unimportant except for that thing he wants to do, his personal pleasure, and satisfying himself. You become the lesser being. And so every time, I mean, I can think of many times where I have fought back and have said something or done something, but the moments where I felt little are the moments where I didn't see it coming.
Does it not also speak to this misconception that, you know, it's done by the office creep, or it's done by the, you know, the guy in the corner, you know, selling sweets, or it's done by like the gardener, or this and this and this and this. It's you know what I mean. What I've come to realize that it's actually just the most like normal people. Like you're saying, this guy's a university professor. The story recently of that guy was for that accounting firm who sexually harassed his junior. And for me, it's just like it's professionals, it's accountants, it's priests, it's,
yeah, you know? I think the thing is also men will never take accountability, because once you take accountability for maybe being a harasser, or not even having that label, but saying I have harassed a woman once, or I have felt, you know what, this was overboard, looking back at it, is that they feel like it puts them in the same bucket as, say, rapists or whatever it is. So they don't want to admit it because they don't want to be seen in that kind of way. And I've had a lot of conversation with men that I know to even have gone too far, whether it's drunk or, you know, just at work or whatever it is. I know that people have been like, you know, hashtag not in my name, and gone for marches where I'm like, but actually a little bit in your name, because remember last week at, you know, Kitchener's, for instance, where it was too far and people feel uncomfortable. But because you don't want to, you think also, like you said, that rapists, harassers, abusers are on the fringe of our society or our world, you don't want to lump yourself in that same group. So do you think you've had instances where maybe, I remember we were speaking earlier on and you were talking about unlearning. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Like I've had to do a lot of unlearning. You know, having gone to like boys' schools and boarding schools specifically, you are taught to think in a certain way and act and behave in a certain way.
By peers.
By your peers, but I mean, I guess, but the supporting society as well. I mean, as in you're not taught that this is wrong or
it's always boys will be boys.
Yeah, that sort of thing, and it's reinforced from an early age. So for me, like in high school, I'll say, I used to smack girls' bums, and it was like playful. You're supposedly playful and in a really weird way, like endearing, and then you grow up and you realize that is like next level fucked up, you know. And so even in them just like laughing, you think, oh, okay, cool, well, this is obviously a game. But like you mentioned earlier on, that those sort of things actually completely like belittle someone, and they feel like powerless, so they can't even like say, Mindy, what you're doing is messed up, and you shouldn't be doing it. So for me, not in like recent times, at least not that I've been told of or been alerted to, but like I've had to do a lot of unlearning of like things that were really that seemed just like the norm growing up.
The consequences and the burden is always placed on the woman, and so within that, like speaking out is just completely difficult, because you have to relive it, you have to re-explain and teach people in some way about the right and the wrong. And people seem to think that sexual harassment isn't such a bad thing. It's just like it's a little bad behavior. When we ran the OK Malam Cool Cat story, where we called him out for his behavior and say we can't cover his work because you can't separate the artist from the man. Like it's one and the same thing. AKA jumped on and he used the words, "It's not like he raped her," and so that's very problematic. That belittles what happened to that woman, saying it's not as bad as. Then what is bad? What is bad about harassing women?
And yeah, like you're saying, the fact that also the burden becomes on the woman. It's like we don't take responsibility for it, and we find it hard to call out our peers.
Yeah.
I've come to see. You know?
I think it's the same thing as when you do call somebody out. So, I mean, I've got lots of male friends and even just people in my life where if you do call them out, it is as big as you saying. So like AKA will say, it's not like I raped you if he was your friend, for instance. And so it's like, why are you making a big deal out of this thing? We were all drunk yesterday, or like, you know, you're basically calling me something hectic. Or when you put a word like harassment on bad behavior or boys will be boys, you are making it almost like a crime versus something that they deem to be a little bit fun or whatever. So I think when you do say something to someone, especially if they're in your circle, it's a lot more difficult because now you are saying what you've done is commit a crime against me, and that it becomes much bigger. Like, now what are you going to do about it? What are the steps? How is your relationship going to change now that this person feels like, shoot, now this person's accused me of a crime, basically.
And I think just by the definition that you guys both gave, the fact that, you know, it's like unsolicited advances, for me, just speaks volumes, because we were having a chat in one of my WhatsApp groups with just dudes, and we're like, a lot of guys were complaining about the fact that they don't know how to like navigate, like, I guess especially like public and open spaces with women, because they don't know. It's like can I compliment her about hair, or if I think those are nice shoes, or should I just like completely leave it now, or if I walk into a lift, must I just look down and just like focus on the corner of the lift, you know? And so there's that side of it. I don't know what your guys.
I think it's the fact that when men compliment women, they always expect a reward, or mostly expect a reward. And so when you're saying you compliment me on my hair, and I say thank you, and then you think that various conversations need to follow, or like anything else must happen. Compliment a woman and then move on. Like, we don't need to, unless I reciprocate it. And so you need to know when it's welcome, when your presence is welcome. So we're not saying don't be polite, or don't compliment. Is just know the boundaries and also understand yourself why you're complimenting the person. Is it because you have other interests? But then when the person is showing you that they don't have those same interests, then move along.
And I also think that maybe work should just be not a place to compliment people's things at all. If you go to a club, I mean, there are lots of men now who are using this like, well, now I don't even know what to say because I mean, just say hello, it's harassment. And I'm like, no, don't be like this. Yeah, don't be a victim. Women are trash too, because you know exactly what harassment entails. And for me, even if you come and you offer a drink and you say hello, the minute I, like she said, show disinterest, and men know how to read body language, they just choose to ignore it. Or I say, you know what, no thank you. Then that should be it. So don't, you know, people like to use this thing of like, well, back now we don't know how to shella anymore because, you know, you're just saying hello is harassment. I'm like, that is not true. But if you say hello and I'm literally like, hi, and you continue to advance, or you're offering drinks, or even when you give me a drink and I choose to drink the fucking drink, that is the end of our interaction in some cases. It does not mean anything about what happens further on, because I didn't ask you for this thing, and there was no exchange of contract to say when I drink it, my pussy comes with it. So I think men also doing this victim thing where they're now like, but now what are we supposed to do, Jens? We're up in the air. And I'm like, get over it, because it's not a thing. Just know the boundaries. If you're complimenting Rhodé on her pants, compliment her pants. But if she's a stranger to you, don't be like, nice ass, because the fuck. Just know, you know, how to wade into the water by the steps. It's just a respect thing. It's because people haven't been respecting forever. They're now being told to respect, and now they're acting like we're persecuting them. Where oppression or equality looks like oppression. And I'm like, get out of here.
I think that they need to also understand the importance of consent. So you have to ask permission.
And ongoing consent.
And
permission to compliment.
No, I mean, like, even if you've been on dates with someone, you need to ask her if you can kiss her. You can't just go and thinking like things are nice here, or even if I'm flirting back at you, that doesn't mean that I've given you permission to kiss me. And so because our space is so precious, and because we constantly have to construct our lives around our safety, men don't have to think that way. I have to think about where I'm going, walk into my car. Like, I have to think about going in my house whether there's someone or not. Like,
and even the
I have to
response to
constantly do
harassment,
that.
I can either be too rude and you want to teach me a lesson, or I'm too polite and that means I want some. So there's also like this fine line. People are always like, oh, why don't you just ignore him? And there are women who've been killed over literally ignoring a man in a bar, and women who are at best you're harassed more, and at worst you're killed or raped. So I'm just like, there is no fine line of this balance between knowing how to be assertive or saying no, but then, or being polite, but then looking like you might be inviting more than you are, which I think is also unfortunate.
But I like what you're saying about how actually, if guys can also just drill it into their heads from the minute they start their professional working life, is just actually, these are things not to be done at work. You know, yes, maybe one day you might find your wife at work or whatever, or someone that you work with, but let that happen outside of work. But I mean, in a social setting, you know, and I think that's when I realized that when you guys, City Press did a big study on like how hectic it is in the film and television industry locally, and how just the sheer volume of women that had complained against, particularly senior. Producers, directors, so on and so forth. And then I realized that, firstly, it doesn't, the sexual harassment isn't like masked in any particular industry. It happens in every industry. And secondly, actually just don't make advances, at work. Just, not that you should be doing it at home, but I mean, specifically at work.
Okay, I want to ask Rhodé a question. So you've been harassed at work, I suppose, not this particular company, but just in your, I'm sure, your extensive career. Have you ever reported an incident of sexual harassment at work, and what happened following that? Were there any consequences?
I've learned now that when it happens to check the person immediately. Like, I've had someone say, like, I'm talking to him about work, and he's just like, and he stopped me and he said, like, I just have to, I can't. And I was like, no, you don't have to, and you can actually stop yourself. You're a grown man, you're not incapable of self-control, before he even finished his sentence, so he knows his place. But when I started out many years ago, there was an older man. I was probably 20, 21, and there was an older man who worked with us, and he'd hug everyone or greet, and his hand would just brush your breast. Like, even you'd be like, but it happens so often and to so many, and we reported him. And then I think the terrible thing was that as a young woman, and it's your first job, and you're made to sit opposite this person that you've just complained. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to say something. Now you have to sit across the table from this person and say to them what they did to you and how it made you feel. Like a man who's a radio host. Come on. You have to explain to this man. And then he says sorry, and then we must all move on, And so... officers, men are very, very well protected. They're the majority in our offices most times, and so young women coming in they're vulnerable. And so when I do now get young women to come in, whether it's to shadow or as interns or young reporters, I make it my duty to have the conversation with them about, if anything ever happens to you, you can say something, and you can come to me, and I'll make a whole lot of noise, and it's happened to me, and so I'm not scared. And I'm not scared to the point where they know I'll say something.
But what's unfortunate?
And it's unfortunate, that you have that you have to be seen as angry and aggressive because you tell people basic things like don't say that, don't do that. Grown men and men that are quite intelligent and know that, but it's a power struggle, and men have always been taught that whatever they want, they can have. Whatever they lay their eyes on, doesn't matter what it is, they're entitled to it.
I think that was one of the most poignant things you've said in this conversation. For me, was the whole thing of why men compliment you, what the intention is. So I think this other thing with men being responsible for themselves and knowing whatever it is the intention behind why they do things, and that a lot of the times, the reason why men get in trouble is because their intentions are hardly ever pure. Because when there's no reaction to whatever, it's like I said, either violent or super scary. So for me at work, one of the jobs I had recently, there was a man who came to the smoking section where I was smoking, and he asked me if I had a boyfriend. So I was like, yeah, I do. And then he was like, what do your boobs look like? So I was like, and it was like 0 to 100. It was literally the first conversation I've ever had with this person. Jesus. So, and he was like a freelancer sort of on the set, and I was just like, okay, cool. Ignored him, carried on, and then he was just like, what positions do you like in bed? Can I text you sometime? Like, you look like a freak. But just kept going on and on and on about things, and I literally was no response. I'm just sitting smoking. Like, I even put my cigarette out at some point. I'm trying to get up. He's like, no, cool, let's talk. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, I took it too far. Started again. So the minute I went inside and I told all my friends, I was like, guys, I actually don't know what to do, because there's no HR here. Like, this person's on contract, so am I. Like, I actually am. And I kept thinking, okay, he's told me that in this conversation that he's, rent is due and he's poor and this contract life is not working for him. And all I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin this person's job chances off something that I can't prove in a situation where there's no HR. And I think that's also something in the arts, is like, you're always in these spaces with men that, like in cars, going to shoots or wherever, that lend themselves to inappropriate, or in bars or at night in a club because you're shooting something. And there isn't really I've never felt in a body that actually protects people in the arts where I felt like I could report. And for me, all I did was go to my car and literally speak to my friends and cry. I reported it. They told me that, like, I was making a big deal and maybe I shouldn't go smoke outside by myself anymore. And that was the end. And I saw the guy the next day, and I just was, I literally was shook. At least it helped me not smoke for a week, but I was like super shook that this person's still here walking around like his shit don't stink. And nothing. I don't even think they spoke to him even to say sorry.
I think the unfortunate thing as well is that sometimes in terms of structures where you can report these sort of things, you'll find that it's actually a woman that's in charge. Like in that recent case that I mentioned of that accounting firm, the lady actually did go to report it, and her immediate boss or her immediate senior was a woman, and she basically protected this creep that works in. And I find that when you, or at least from what I've heard, is that some women, I think you said particularly white women though, protect men. And I just find that so problematic, because it becomes even more difficult for someone, especially who's junior, to then escalate these things.
A lot of the times you just have people say like, but what about his job? What about his reputation? What about his, what about all those things to him when he was doing the thing?
Yeah.
Like, why is it somebody else's job to take care of these thoughts and have that extra burden now of this activity, but now these choices that might end up in all these, different things.
And you almost need like a class action, which is crazy that that's the case. Like we were watching Unmarried on Mzansi Magic the other day, and it's only when the second woman was like, no, this also happened to me, and then someone else like, oh, this also happened to me. It's like only now we can take it further, And it's just whack that there really aren't any structures. I feel like. You said you guys had brought someone in for training at your place of work.
Yeah, at work we brought someone in to teach men these skills and these basic tools of how the words that they use, which they don't even think of sometimes, are harmful to women. How there's some women who choose, so on a Monday there's only a couple of us, and then the rest of the office work Tuesday to Saturday. And so some women, because compliments make them feel uncomfortable, they'll only wear a dress on a Monday. They won't wear it on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because they don't these compliments make them feel uncomfortable, and having the conversation with someone for you is also uncomfortable, even more so because this happened to me. And so we had someone coming in just to have that conversation with men about how they behave within spaces, and also so that the place where we spend most of our time is a safe space for women. And I think like it's important that it's done everywhere.
Yeah, I was about as like
sadly.
Yeah, as ridiculous as it sounds, I think that's actually that should be the approach by like every single company, no matter the size in this country.
Yeah, I just don't think I don't know if it's how I feel about the arts. That's such a negative thing, but I just don't feel like there's structures there. I don't know if, I mean, newspaper still falls somewhere between corporate and, but I mean just pure arty based companies like television. I just feel like there's no support structure, and I feel like because you also socialize a lot with your colleagues in a very alcohol laden space and sometimes even drug fueled, it just gets erased because it is what it is.
It's also an exploitative environment, so it's so easy for those creeps.
And a lot of the time, how you get advanced is not because of what you know and what you've studied and whatever. It's who you know and what you're willing to do after hours to, get somewhere. So I just feel like, there's so many conditions with this thing. Like, okay, I'll give you this break, or I'll let you do this. And there's nothing that, in accounting, I feel like it's more, you have to have this degree or this CFA or this whatever. And you have people with junior somethings coming in and just things are happening. Older men are offering these things and you want to advance, so you don't want to say no. And sometimes you're offered these things that are so, people are always accusing young women of, you slept your way up to the top. And I'm like, what about accusing these old men of like offering certain things that only you can progress with this type of favor back, and putting some people up against the wall where it's like eat or be eaten, like literally, where it's like I need to make certain decisions, and how come these are the things that are happening and there's no HR in this environment? Like, what is going on? We're just left to the wolves, and you go out to party with them, they touch you next day, it's like, sorry, it was alcohol, anyway, carrying on with work.
One of the respondents in the episode, a dude, talks about how, he didn't use a specific example, but he was just like, it also happens to dudes, blah, blah, blah. I not that guys shouldn't be like reporting it or shouldn't like be taking it to like the next level. My only thing is I find it problematic because it feels like you take away from the real issue. I don't know what your guys take on that.
Well, like I said earlier on, men don't have to construct their lives around this fear of being raped, being murdered, being touched, being harassed. Like, men don't have to do that. Like, you think nothing of walking to the shop around the corner. I can't. I have to think twice about walking from my door to the car. And so at night when I park in my complex, I run up the stairs to get in, quickly shut the door and lock. And my dad said, like, I have to get a taser when I walk from wherever I am to my car, have it in my hand. Why should I do that? You don't have to do it. It's true.
I mean, as unfortunate as it is, I've said it straight up to especially to my nieces and my younger cousins, that especially if they have to like take taxis or that, I was like, guys, please, I'm not the boss of your bodies or your fashion, but please don't wear revealing clothing. And I think it's just disgusting that we have to get to that level. But I'm like, yo, I would rather be that uncle or that older brother to you than see an unfortunate situation purely because some disgusting men can't control themselves.
But I mean,
and take
that's
to
the thing
ranks.
we were talking about even earlier, is that I can literally, at work I was not wearing anything cleavage wise or whatever it is, and not that I should even be explaining that, but people literally have the worst happen to them dressed in whatever. Things happen to babies, things happen to grannies. So it's actually yes, there is a part of it that's got to do with how you're dressed and the places you put yourselves in or how much alcohol you consume, but things happen to a lot of people whether or not they're in those spaces, whether or not they're dressed like that, whether or not they're even of an appropriate age. So I think teaching women and rather not men, it just takes away responsibility from men. But anyway, we do have a question from our viewer, Noxie. So do you guys know of, or have you heard of any companies that teach men rather than speaking to women about sexual harassment, things like that, but actually teach men how to conduct themselves, maybe in the workplace, but just even as adolescents coming into adulthood? Are there any things that companies that you know that address that with the men?
There are various gender bodies and NGOs in the country that does that, and I think that there's different ones. There's ones that steer towards women and there's ones that steer towards men, but I think that, and they're all really great, those companies, but I think that the thing is that you have to be sure is who's the person that's coming to teach. So if it's men, have a man talk. If it's women, have a woman talk, because I don't want to talk to a man about what men do to me. And if it's a shared group where it's men and women, to have a woman there, because it's mostly difficult for women to say to a man that this is what men does to me. But there's so many NGOs and bodies that assist with teaching.
So I think maybe we'll make
the Google, but we can always
we'll get a couple of and I think so. In addition to that, I think sometimes the things we have to say, because they sound ridiculous, but I think even teaching boys in like life orientation classes from like grade 0 or whatever it is, to start teaching them about these things. I think we just leave it and assume that one day when they get out to society, particularly, I mean, the only time really, especially if you go to a single sex school, that you interact with the opposite sex, besides holidays, is when you get to varsity, right? And by then you've learned so much crap that it becomes even more problematic to try and unlearn the stuff, or at least it will take you longer. So, you know, like these, I don't know what life orientation is, I mean, like what they actually do at schools, but these...
Or the language you use when you're speaking to young boys, you know, like you said, the whole thing of boys will be boys, like it's a
calling grown men boys will be boys, but a woman is a woman.
If a little kid is being hit by a boy, it's like because he likes you, like no. Like,
even the other thing of consent. I mean, I remember there was a tweet that went viral, an American one, where this little boy had drawn a picture for some little girl and then wanted to like sit with her at lunch or something, or take her to prom, something like that, and she said no. And this tweet was like, oh my god, how could she say no to my sweet little brother or whatever? And I was like, first of all, they're age mates, so to her it's not the sweet little boy. And second of all, your brother also needs to learn that just doing something nice for someone doesn't automatically access him to this girl. And then her saying no, because people were calling her all kinds of bitches and stuff. I think she was like 13. Like, oh, your sister's such a bitch, she's so mean. And I was like, you see, teaching her already that her no means nothing, and that actually she should feel ashamed for not allowing someone to do something to her because they gave her something nice. I think is most important. But I wish you men would actually take yourselves and Google these companies and go as mates, even to go check out some sort of like weekend life skills course on learning that some of the things that even you think, okay, it's not overtly, but there might be things that you learn that you're like, oh shit.
Call your friends out.
Exactly.
Like call them
But even
out.
because you need to learn more, I wish that boys would just be like, you know what, guys, this weekend we're going to go to Kitcheners on Friday. Saturday we've got team building with the like sexual harassment coaches, you know, just friends taking upon themselves, like, because some workplaces just won't do that.
True.
And for you to be also responsible young kangs, as you like to call yourselves, and just it's like irritating me. Anyway, so we've got to wrap up. Is there any last thoughts or one last comment you each have?
Keep your hands to yourself, my niggas. Just keep your hands to yourself and your eyes, I guess, to yourself. Just be for real though. Like, I mean, just no. Just I think guys just need to learn to control themselves. Honestly. And there's no excuse in 2018 that we have to be teaching grown ass men like how to behave. I mean, Chimao.
Yeah, it's so tiring. It's so tiring to constantly having to explain things to people who actually know that their behavior is bad. And I think that we more and more see young women like speaking out on social media. And so my thing is that I will always believe a woman, because it's so difficult to say that this thing has happened to me. And if like you can prove it didn't happen, I'll apologize, sure, but I'm always gonna believe the woman, because like, y'all are just nasty. Like, no means no. And call your friends out. And I think that people just do not call their friends out enough. They don't teach them that what you're saying is actually not funny. Like, if your friend does something, monkey, tell him.
I'm listening.
Jokes saying jokes, you know. I don't know. My last comment is basically, I think the same thing. I actually wish the Me Too movement would catch on fire here. I think I asked my friends on Facebook to comment with an example of sexual harassment that had happened to them. I just wanted to see how deep the stories are and how many women. And it was pretty much most of my friends, but all of them wanted to do it in my DMs. And one girl commented with her story in the comments section and said, I actually wish that we would all comment here because we need, and even if you want to name companies or not, it's fine, but just we need to see how many, because now you've all gone to her DMs, only she knows how many there are, and only she knows the depth of the stories and things like that. So we need to get braver, I think, about, and I know that some of it comes with actual job and losing that, so not to say even call out the name of the company, but the more we're transparent about it, the more other people behind us, because my mom and her friends have been dealing with this, we're dealing with this, kids are dealing, like, it's boring now. So the more we shout about it, the more it changes.
Even in companies or circles where it seems like it's fun and it's like oh, we all buddy and family, brother, sister, like even in those environments, like I think, like especially like women must, like, at least I feel be in a position where they can like completely escalate these things, you know, and be supported by the structures that be whether it's a man or a woman up at the top. Like, I feel like we shouldn't be making an excuse that the environment, you know, is conducive for this kind of behavior.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, thanks so much, Rhodé Marshall, for joining us, and Shmangs as usual.
Yes, sir.
Our next episode will be out next week, Tuesday. So please, Unfiltered Tuesdays is a thing now. We promise to deliver content on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And our topic is hoe phase. So if you have any comments, tweets, thoughts, dreams about the hoe phase, please can you tweet us or leave comments on Facebook and follow us everywhere and share all of these and like us and love you and bye.
Peace.